I'm here in this school to talk about one of the classic subjects, maths. And maths has a problem. And I know what you're thinking. Maths is nothing but problems. But no problem in maths is as contentious as this. How do we deal with the subjectivity of the prior in Bayes' theorem? Bayesian thinking exploded in the 1960s. While Heinz had only 57 varieties, Bayesians had 46,656, according to World War II cryptologist Jack Good. There were many varieties like subjective, objective, empirical, semi-empirical, logical, fuzzy, pseudo, quasi, parametric, non-parametric, hyperparametric, and non-hyperparametric. But most of these were only useful to their creators, and even then, minimally. Where people used to say inverse probability, they now said Bayesian inference. Even though Bayes did very little of the work and Laplace did most of the heavy lifting, the history was written by the English. And as a result, many did not know about the contributions of Laplace and held Bayes in higher esteem. As Glenn Schaefer of Rutgers University said, "But I am biased. The French let us down during World War II, and then there was the ghastly de Gaulle." In 1960, George Box founded the statistics department at the University of Wisconsin. He taught a course on foundational statistics, and the more he taught it, the more it seemed like something wasn't quite right. And that's why I'm here in this school to talk with an expert on mathematics, education, history, to learn more about this tumultuous time in maths. Now, George Box studied under Egon Pearson, bulwark for frequentism, if you like. And over time, his course material was slowly shifting to become more and more Bayesian, even though it was heretical. And folks would laugh and call it all nonsense, but Box felt that the Bayesian perspective produced more clean results. Now, Bayes' rule gained further notoriety as the world of mathematics came to grips with Stein's paradox. Charles Stein had developed a way to make statistical predictions that produced better results than simple averages. He could use them for chickens of different breeds laying eggs, or baseball batters and their batting averages, and he produced astounding results. But something in his work seemed familiar. Now, Stein was figuring out a way to worm in his preconceived notions into his questions about chicken layers and baseball batters. And if you came to him at the time and said, "I got a chicken here can lay 1,000,000 eggs," he'd think that's absolute nonsense. Why? Because he was using a prior the whole time and didn't even realize it. Now, Stein refused to acknowledge any connection between his paradox and Bayes' theorem, even though he accidentally reproduced Bayes' actuary credibility formula. He referred to the use of Bayesian priors as completely inappropriate. Now, Box thought Stein's paradox was important because it reminded him that every number has a context. You can't just hand someone a pile of numbers and say, "Analyze this," and expect them to do anything meaningful. No, the allure of Bayesian thinking, as with Stein's paradox, was to remind people that every set of numbers has a story, and that's the prior distribution. The clashes between frequentists and Bayesians were, well, frequent. Now, the frequentists, they thought they were making exclusive results that only they could get. But the Bayesians started getting more and more similar results, and even the same results over time. And, well, if you want to make a Bayes omelet, you got to crack those Bayes eggs. Folks thought Bayes was all deceptive for a long time, but that started turning on its head pretty soon. Now, the battle wasn't over for Bayesians yet. In a stunning example of Lindley's paradox, in 1987, a Princeton professor named Robert Jung conducted a study of psychokinetic powers and their existence. And he handed the data to the frequentists, and they concluded the psychokinetic powers do in fact exist. And he handed the exact same data to the Bayesians, and they concluded precisely the opposite. And this same Lindley spotted an error in one of Fisher's works, and he published a correction. And Fisher was so upset, he complained about it to his friends for the next 8 months. Now Fisher, he would never give Bayes a try except in very select circumstances. He figured, if you don't know the prior information, you can't just assume it's all 50-50 and equal across the board. No, he figured there's a difference between not knowing the prior information and assuming that all the prior is equal across the board. There's a couple times on the book when he used Bayes, though, only when he was dead sure about his priors. Hope for a compromise was on the horizon. Could a prior be constructed using frequentist methods, and then the rest of Bayes' theorem follows? Well, this method had been pioneered by Pearson, Turing, and others since the 1920s, but it never really gained steam. And the worst enemy of Bayes the whole time was the computational difficulty. The more unknowns in the situation, the more complex the integration, and it challenged even the best computers of the time. Despite the blowbacks from the mathematical community, Bayes' theorem permeated into other fields. In 1961, Bayes' theorem was used successfully to identify the heart diseases of children at a hospital in Salt Lake City. Cryptanalysts said that Bayes' theorem was producing solutions to problems for which no other methods existed at the time. The CIA and the courts of law, on the other hand, closed their doors to Bayes' theorem. They said it was too slow or pseudo-mathematical. So who won? Well, no one exactly. The frequentists have their methods and their applications, and the Bayesians have their methods and their applications. And Otis Redding had a #3 hit single in the UK.